I've met pilots of celebrities and pilots everywhere I go. I'm hanging out in the pilot lounge, and I'm
Yeah.
meeting someone, whether they're flying fans or they're flying someone that's affiliated with the team, and like I said, it quickly my perspective quickly changed from airlines to corporate, and this job really opened up, and I'm like, you know what, like I said, I'm an FBO dog now. I like going to FBOs. I
Mhm.
like meeting other people. This job definitely opened up the corporate conversation in my head.
Hello, aviators. Welcome back to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the tips, tricks, hacks, and shortcuts to get you into a cockpit faster and cheaper. I'm your co-host, Sean Richey.
And I'm Mike Martin.
And we've got an episode today for you for anybody this is a huge thing out there. There's Facebook groups on this subject. There's emails coming into our inbox all the time on not necessarily skipping your CFI, but alternative means or an additional means for low time pilots to get that valuable time in the logbook so you can get to that 1,500 hours and get to the airlines.
Yeah. It's always been a hot topic on our podcast. We've had several videos over the years. Some of our most popular views are regarding, alternate time building and skipping your CFI and stuff, where we don't actually 100% say that that's something you should do, but we like to give the viewers, alternate options on things that could help them out. So we've got a really interesting guest today. He builds his time in an alternate manner that not a lot of people may have heard about. So we have Nick Tillman today on the podcast, and he's worked here locally at Lunkin Flight Training Center, which is that great flight school that allowed us to tour their facility and everything. That's how we came in contact with him. But after the flight school, he got into broadcasting, and it's a really, really interesting job, and he's going to talk all about it. So, Nick, welcome to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast.
Thank you guys so much. So to start, kind of give you my background.
Sure,
Um,
yeah. Tell us
so
how you got
so
where you are.
Yeah, so I actually went the college route, not in aviation though. So a lot of people that I talk to who are maybe aviators, pilots, or stewardess, whatever they are, they usually have a family member that's in it. I never had anybody in my family that wanted to be a pilot or even wanted to be a stewardess. I had nobody on the aviation side of things. So coming out of high school, I went to college to pursue an education degree. And after my 4 year degree, I kind of fell in the COVID year. Um, wanted to be a teacher in 2021, and there was just no teaching jobs. So on and off, I was working for a construction company. I was trying to stay outside. I played sports in college, so I wanted a job where, I wanted to be outside in the sun and something that keep me in shape. And construction was the best route. So when I after I graduated, I told my boss, I was like, "Hey man, it's probably my last summer," and he was like, "Hey, why don't you stay around for this summer?" Maybe into this fall, and we'll see if we can't get you like a project manager position. And so I was living in and out of hotels. I was like, I did not get a degree for this, and I was working at the end of the Columbus International Airport. I was putting in physical education equipment for Fort Red Patterson Air Force Base. So all day for 3 weeks, I just saw airplanes take off and land. And I was like,
Oh
that looks
man.
really cool. Yeah, I was like, that looks really cool. I don't really want to be a teacher. Uh, so you know what? I'm going to try that. A week later, I contacted a school out of Harrison, Ohio, and I did an introductory flight in Harrison, Ohio. And
That's,
after,
Nick, that's where I live. I'm sitting in Harrison, Ohio right now, right next to India 67,
yeah,
Cincinnati West Airport you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, Cincinnati West Airport. And as soon as I did the discovery flight, I was hooked, like every other pilot who does an introductory flight. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna call every airport within 25, 50 nautical miles, and I'm gonna try to get a job because I just wanted to get a job inside of an airport. To be around pilots, to be around aviation. I realized I wanted to kind of turn away from education and really take over aviation. And so that's what I did. And really the story of my education career revolves around networking, which is huge. So I called every airport, every flight school. I was like, "Hey, my name is Nick Tillman. This is kind of my story. This is my background. I want to be in aviation." Well, Lunkin Flight Training Center, they kind of bit the hook, and they were like, "We have a business coordinator position open." So long story short, I worked behind the desk at at Lunkin Flight Training Center, got all my certificates,
Oh, great.
instructed there for about 4 or 5, or instructed there for 4 or 5 months from March until about August. And again, networking, it's good. It's going to revolve. Like I said, I met someone on the ramp. It was actually my boss now. It's like, hey, my name's Tillman. I was doing my instrument rating at the time. He's like, text me when you have 500 hours. So I landed this sports broadcasting gig, which I guess we can kind of dive into that a little bit.
Awesome.
Um,
Let me stop you there for a second. One of the things that you touched on that we hit in our Pro Pilot Playbook course is, try to expose yourself to as much of aviation as you can, even if you're not flying. And one of the things we always suggest is try to get a job at the airport, whether it's fueling planes or like you did an administrative job or something, and that can just
mhm.
open up huge doors for you. So that's really
Right.
great that you did that.
Yep.
And man, you started your networking early, and look where it landed you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and not only that, but I mean, yeah, we explicitly tell people to get a job at the airport. And I just, Mike, we're talking about the sightings. I just went to this. This is a sports related thing. I'm not a sports guy, but the Super Bowl of college football was just a few days ago down in Atlanta, and I was down at Fulton County. And I walked in the airport. The place is packed. I mean, you had to have your reservation in there. They had one of the runways shut down to park the airplanes on. It was a mess in there. And the kid behind the desk is like staring me down, eyeballing me as I walk in there. And I'm like, uh-oh, what'd I do? Who'd I make mad? But I finally get up to the desk. He's like, hey, are you on a podcast? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I thought so. I've seen every episode, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I got this job here because of you. You told us to get. I'm like, all right, great. How's it going? He's like, I'm through my commercial, and he's, I don't know, he's chugging right along. He's talking about all the pilots he's interacting with daily, and so Justin, here's your shout out there at Fulton County. Thanks for tuning in.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
in the college, Nick, you just mentioned the college thing. That is 100% not required anymore to be a professional pilot. So, but if it is something that, you're watching this episode right now, you're like, well, I'm not going to go to college because, whatever, you want that experience or whatever, steer clear of an aviation degree. Get your degree in something else. And then you're still checking the box of having a degree if it ever comes back up again that it is needed. But, do something else. Have another, something in your back pocket you could go to just in case. But yeah, loving it, man. You did everything right. Calling all the flight schools. That's another thing. That's good for anything, whether you're shopping for a car or whatever. You get the best price you can. Then you call every other dealership in town and say, well, they're offering me this. What can you do? That's smart. Sounds like you've done everything right so far. Loving it.
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I called. So a little more on the networking side of things. Like I said, I called everybody within 25, 50 nautical miles. I was like, I'll be a janitor. I'll work the concession stands, whatever. I just want to be around aviation. And that's all it took. And really, Lunkin Flight Training Center is the roots to where I am now. They're the reason I'm in the position I am now, because that led to further networking. Like I said, I met my boss on the non-movement area, on their ramp there, in Lunkin Flight Training Center, and I shook his hand. I introduced myself. I said, I'm an instrument pilot. I'm really interested in what you do. I come from kind of a sports background. And he was like, text me when you have 500 hours. And, every time I got a new rating, I was like, hey, James, I'm at 150 hours. I just kept, I kept texting him, kept talking to him. We kept
Mhm.
in touch. And it got me the job that I have now, which is a really cool job. I'm a sports aerial broadcaster for Winged Vision Incorporated. We're based out of Frederick, Maryland. We have 5 pilots just around the United States. I am based out of Cincinnati. I'm never in Cincinnati. We have a pilot based out of Boston. He's actually our chief. We have someone down in Texas. We have someone in Phoenix. And then the last one is down in Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, cool.
So we're all around the United States, and we cover the regions of the United States. I say I cover the regions of the United States, but I've done trips from Pittsburgh to LA. I've done a trip from Cincinnati to Phoenix multiple times. And what we do is we do the aerial broadcasting for the NFL and college football. We also get some other events like NBA. I did the U.S. Open in New York City in August or September, October-ish, which was a really cool opportunity. But a lot of cross country time, and the experience that I've gotten now is not, like I said, I've dealt it's single pilot IFR. I've dealt with mountainous terrain. Some of the best experience that you can get as a pilot. Really, to sum up my job, after I got hired, they sent me an airplane, a Cessna 206. They sent me a credit card. They said, I need you in New York City on Saturday. I had to find a way to get there. And whether that was in New York City or whether that was in Phoenix, I had to do the flight planning. And you don't really know what being a pro pilot is like until you really have to call FBOs. You have to make fuel stops to fill up your own airplane. You have to get hotels. You have to get rental cars. And that's what this job entailed. It really gave me the full experience on top of dealing with tough terrain, dealing with tough weather conditions. It's a blessing. It's a really cool opportunity,
Wow.
and it all comes from networking.
Yeah. I mean, you described pretty much a corporate pilot's job, except for the fact that you're, shooting so give us the detailed details of what you're doing. Are you taking the place of a Goodyear blimp, but basically orbiting a stadium,
Yeah,
or what?
that's a really good question. Yeah, so we're actually kind of like subcontractor for Goodyear. So you see a lot of our shots, and it's like, this shot is brought to you by Goodyear. So so long story short, Goodyear has 3 blimps, and
Right.
the blimps can't travel across the country like we can.
Right up there. They're
So
right up here in Ohio, actually.
yeah,
Have you ever flown over that facility? They got these massive hangars. It's pretty neat.
yeah. So they're wherever they're based, they pretty much stay there, like I said, because they can't travel across the country. So there's a Goodyear blimp in Ohio that covers a lot of like Cleveland Browns games. There's one down in Florida, and then I believe there's one in Texas or Cali. I could be wrong on that. But there's 3 based, and they pretty much stay there. Wherever they're at, they stay there. Well, let's say ABC's like, hey, we want let's say they contact Goodyear, like, hey, we need you to cover, I don't know, Phoenix, the Fiesta Bowl. We'll use that for example. I just covered the Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix. Well, they can't take a blimp to Phoenix, so that's where we come into play. Goodyear contacts Winged Vision, my boss, and we do the coordinating there. And they say, Nick, I need you in Phoenix on Saturday or Sunday or whatever day it is. And I'm like, all right. And that's kind of how it goes. So we're kind of subcontractors through Goodyear, but we also do work for the other networks as well directly.
Gotcha.
Awesome. So I always tell people there's 2 reasons I like my job. Number one is the obvious reason. I love to fly and the airplanes and everything to do with flight. But I also love to travel, and you've been flying in training and all of that, but this is the first time you really started to do a lot of travel with your job. So are you enjoying that aspect of it also?
Oh my goodness. So I did the USC Penn State game in LA.
Yeah.
And I was coming from Cincinnati. It took me 8 hours to plan my flight because I had to take Victor Airways, and I'm only in a Cessna 206. I can't get up to the flight levels. So it took me 8 hours. It took me 2 days. So throughout 2 days, I planned this route from Cincinnati to LA. I knew I had to be there on Saturday. I texted my boss. I was like, hey, you mind if I leave on Tuesday? And he was like, no. So I made stops. I looked at airports from Cincinnati to LA that I would really enjoy to make a stop at. And I kind of made a little mini vacation out of it. I stopped in Albuquerque, New Mexico, stayed there for a night. I stopped in Phoenix, stayed there for a night, played a round of golf. And then I shot over to Lake Havasu City, which is a beautiful lake in Arizona. Landed there, made a quick fuel stop, and then eventually made my way over to Burbank Airport.
And you're like, oh my God, somebody's paying me to do this.
And I'm like, yeah, right. And I got into it as a low time pilot. I got into it kind of as a time. It stinks to say, but we all say it. It's a time building job. But I quickly realized I lost track of my hours. I was like, this is the best job on the road. I didn't look at it as a time building job. I kind of looked at it as I'm in the best position I could possibly be in with 500 hours. And so I kind of just took advantage of it. And like I said, I got really behind on my logbook. I didn't even care about the hours anymore. I was just
it's easy
going
to do.
and cool places.
Yeah. When you end up with a gig that you're enjoying, it's real easy to not touch that logbook for a long time. I've been guilty of it several times. And the problem with that is it is a disaster when you get back into it. So take that as a,
Yes,
lesson
please don't get
my
behind. Please don't
yeah.
get behind.
But so Nick, one thing back real quick back to your day to day when you're actually on the job. Just my own curiosity here. This is probably not important to most viewers, but is the equipment in the aircraft fixed, or in it's a whatever shot, or they can control it from the ground, or you got somebody riding along with you for the actual event?
Yeah, good question. So the airplane that we have, or the camera that we have on the airplane, it's mounted on a fuselage. It's a gyro stabilized camera,
Yep.
hundreds of $1,000 camera. It's the same cameras that they have on the sideline of games. And
Okay.
we're a 3 operation crew. So there's the pilot, obviously that's me. We have a camera operator who sits in the back only for game day, and then we have a tech engineer who sits on the ground. So let's say we'll continue to use the Phoenix example. So let's say that I got to do this festival in Phoenix. Well, my job, I have all the gear inside of my airplane. So I'm in charge of flying that gear down to Phoenix. I have to be here a day before the game because a tech engineer comes and sets up a ground site. Our signal gets sent down to a ground site via a microwave. Then that gets sent off to the NBC truck or the CBS truck, and that's how they get our video like that.
Gotcha.
And so it's a 3-person operation. I get out there day before, meet the tech engineer. He loads up all the equipment. He takes it to the stadium and sets up something called a receive site. And typically the receive site has to be on top of the stadium. It's like a VOR. It's all line of sight.
Sure.
So if he's on one side of the stadium and we lose signal because of like Texas A&M, it's very tall, then it's going to break up the signal.
Yeah, those microwave towers, it's all line of sight. It's not a normal
It's
RF.
all line of sight.
Yep, it's not a normal RF type of frequency
Correct.
that most folks are dealing with.
I think we kind of. Oh, go ahead, Sean. Yeah.
I was just going to get back into something else.
I got something with that. So one thing that came to mind while you're talking, and I think you kind of answered my question. It sounds way more sophisticated, but I thought, when I watch the NFL now and these outside shots, I was thinking it was probably all done with drones now. Because it's cheaper or something. Is there not drones advanced enough to do anything like what you're doing, or what is the story there?
So yeah, there are drones. They brought in drones this year, it's been a cool, unique shot, but the drone can't quite get what we can get with our camera being 2,000
You can't. Drone can't carry that huge 4K. It's probably beyond 4K. It's dumbed down to 4K for broadcast, but that equipment's way too heavy for any drones that would be. You're talking about an autonomous airplane at that point.
Yeah, it's because there's sometimes, like I said, it's mounted on our fuselage, and the director would be like, "Hey, can you get a nice shot of downtown, especially if it's at night or the sun's starting to set." And so there's a beautiful shot of downtown. And what we'll do is we'll swing that camera right underneath the fuselage. Maybe it's on the other side of my airplane, and a drone just can't get that shot. Especially sometimes these cities are 5-10 miles out, and so we'll get that shot of downtown.
Awesome.
Drone can't do that shot, and it's just a different dynamic of a shot. It's just a different dynamic of a picture. Ours is a much brighter scope. That drone is just that little small whatever it is seeing typically inside of the stadium.
Sure. Yeah, they're usually dealing with smaller image sensors, smaller apertures, and whatever. Yeah. When you start talking about real camera equipment, that's heavy stuff.
Right. So give us some. How's the weather affect your job? Because obviously you got to transport these small planes all over the country, and you got to get these shots and everything. How do you handle that?
Yeah. So this is where the experience that I've been getting really comes in the hand. Flying from Cincinnati to LA that's a true cross country, especially when you're flying at 11,000, you're flying at 11,000 feet.
Yeah. We like to call that the transcontinental.
Yeah.
That's big time.
It's big time. And like I said, it takes hours and hours and hours of pre-flight planning. I learned so much in my first month of this job because, I fly, I'm so used to flying 50-mile cross countries where, you fly there and back, and typically takes you an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on what airplane you're in and whatever weather is. If it changes, it doesn't change drastically. Whereas when you're flying across the country, I dealt with 3 different climates flying to LA, 3 different time zones as well. So I've learned that weather can change quickly and always have an out. I always heard that training, and I never ever, when you hear an out, what I mean by that is if you get yourself into a situation, always have an airport or something to get you maybe out of that situation. And I never thought like that. until I got this job, and I got into down in Los Angeles. I got into a pretty sticky situation, and I think that this will be a good learning experience for other listeners. So when I was
Yeah.
flying out of Burbank to come back to Cincinnati, it was IFR. They get that marine layer over there if you're not familiar with LA,
Oh yeah. June
and
gloom. Yeah.
yeah, correct. And they gave me a departure procedure. I know I could tell you everything about a departure procedure. I had never flown one in real life, and the first time I ever got a departure procedure was out of LA, true IFR, and that was my first time ever doing a
Wow.
departure procedure by
On the job
myself,
training.
Yep.
on the job, and
OJT, baby.
oh yeah, and so I'm sitting there on the ground looking at my departure procedure chart, this, that, and the other, and there's something called a climb gradient on your departure procedure chart. That climb gradient's important. I know how to calculate a climb gradient chart, but I always thought I'm always going to be able to outclimb this climb gradient. Well, I took off of LA, and I quickly realized that I was not able to outclimb that climb gradient. And there's mountain obscurations, the north, east, and south side of Burbank. And I knew it. I quickly knew it. And ATC also knew it. Hey, you're not going to be able to outclimb that mountain, are you? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I really got myself in a messy situation here. And he goes, all right, for right now, just fly heading 270. He gave me a radar vector. So I started flying heading 270. And he got back with me. Hey, fly 360, intercept the Needles VOR, the 278 radial Needles VOR to intercept a T route, a intersection on a T route. And in my head, I'm single pilot IFAR, and I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And so I had to act quickly. I pulled out I already had ForeFlight open. I had to find the frequency. I had to dial into the 278 radial. I actually had to dial in the reciprocal of the 278 radial, and I had to do this all in the blink of an eye. And
Wow.
I ended up figuring it out. I got myself out of a situation. I was really only trying to get over top of the mountain obscuration. I was trying to get to an airport on the northern side of that mountain obscuration, just to get cheaper fuel. And I landed, and I instantly told myself, "You're too relaxed. You're too confident." And something like that can turn really bad really quickly.
Right.
And it wasn't.
Those
It
situations
wasn't.
like that humble you and teach you
Yes.
a lesson without
Yes.
bending, breaking, or hurting somebody are the most valuable things. Yeah, and I'm happy to hear you say that you recognize that. That is
Yeah.
great.
It was funny. I landed. I texted my instrument instructor. I said, "Hey, I'm going to get my double I here soon." just because that was a true. It was just it was a really good experience. And for the pilots out there listening, take that and use it as a learning experience. It's your climb gradient. It's important. Everything is important. There's a reason that they teach you it. And don't get complacent. Don't get complacent, because something like that can happen really quickly.
Yeah, man. What kills you doesn't make you strong, or will make you stronger sometimes.
Yeah.
Nick,
Yes.
let's talk some numbers, Nick. So you were talking about your logbook. Have you updated it? How much time you sitting at right now?
I'm at 900 hours right now. I was at
All right.
I was at 500 in August. So I built hours quick. Yeah.
And you got this job right around 500 hours.
Yeah, I got this job right around 500 hours.
So what's your plan? I mean, obviously you're loving what you're doing. You sound like you're a sports guy anyway, so this is like you're in heaven right now. But
Yeah.
I'm just guessing, because the guy who owns this company, he has no illusions that this was meant to be a time building job. And if you weren't flying that airplane, there's a line of guys out the door who would be willing to take your spot in 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
So the money may not be there, is where I'm going with this. But what is your plan after this? Are you looking at airlines or corporate, or you want to continue into this, like something bigger in this realm?
I got in aviation like everybody did. My first day of maybe my first ground ever, when I was getting as a private student or as a student pilot, I had these goals and aspirations of going to the airlines, of being an international pilot for Delta. You see that everywhere. Well, that changed quick. I never realized how broad aviation was. I would love to go, obviously, sometime in my career. It'd be awesome to go the airlines route, and I'm never going to turn down an opportunity. But I'm a FBO dog now. I go to FBO. All I do is go to FBOs, and I love going to FBOs. And I like meeting the people behind the desk at FBOs. I want to go corporate. Corporate is my next endeavor, and I don't see anything changing. Once I land that corporate gig. But like I said, I'm never going to say no to an opportunity. But in my head, I want to go corporate, and I want to go corporate for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of thought he was going to say that, Sean, and I
Yeah.
thought of
I was. Yeah.
I thought of an important point that we've never really brought up in all these hundreds of hours of podcasting. So one of the cool things, and I know several guys, and it's mostly corporate pilots that are in a kind of a larger version of a position of what you're in, is you really don't realize this. It's not just flying the plane and the travel and all that stuff, but if you get it the right corporate operation and the cause is something you're into or something you love, it's a whole different dynamic. I know guys that fly for sports teams. We know some of the Cincinnati Reds pilots, and they're huge baseball fans. You might be able to get on with your favorite owner of your favorite team. If you like the Cowboys, maybe you can fly for the Cowboys. I got a good friend that is in the country music mecca in Nashville, and knows several operators down there and has worked for them. And if you're a big music fan like I am, that might be your dream to work with a celebrity or something. I just saw Kenny Chesney's going to play at the Sphere. I love him. I might go out there. But man, could you imagine a big fan like me flying around, and you get to be part of the action and actually go on tour with your favorite singer because you're flying them around.
Yeah, that would be pretty neat.
Yeah. And there's business things too. I mean, maybe you admired a certain company, you like what they do or whatever, you follow them, you might get to work for their flight department and kind of be part of the cause, so that's a really unique thing. And you kind of stumbled into that earlier in your career. So that's really cool. And that might've played a role, do you think, in your wanting to stay into corporate aviation?
Absolutely. I never even really thought about corporate aviation until this job. I met I met Jerry Jones as pilot when I was covering a Dallas Cowboys game. I've met pilots of celebrities and pilots everywhere I go. I'm hanging out in the pilot lounge, and I'm meeting someone, whether they're flying fans or they're flying someone that's affiliated with the team, and like I said, my perspective quickly changed from airlines to corporate, and this job really opened up. And I'm like, you know what, like I said, I'm an FBO dog now. I like going to FBOs. I like meeting other people. This job definitely opened up the corporate conversation in my head. Absolutely.
And you nailed this. I was kind of saving this towards the end, which we're getting to here. Early on, you said it, and Mike and I have an entire module in the course we sell about it. We are constantly preaching it. We've done multiple episodes mentioning it, maybe even an episode only on it, and that is networking. You have this job because of networking. You were just talking about, the other pilots you're meeting while you're doing this. I mean, it is so important and critical to not only not burn bridges, but be forming a network. When you said Jerry Jones pilot, hopefully, you stuck his phone number, exchanged some contact information, and that stuff is critical to someday ending up with a job. Anybody you're working with right now, even if you don't like them necessarily, you guys don't get along or click, keep the contact information in your phone.
And Sean, the networking starts day one, and he's a good illustration of that.
Yep.
People think, oh, I'll get all my ratings, and then I'll become a flight instructor, and then I'll start nosing around and networking and trying to find a job. And that's not how it works. Actually, the moment you start your training, the contacts you meet the very first day, some of the other students in your, even at your level, will later help you in your career. Some of the older instructors, some of the other people that are training there, all of that. So, what we tell folks is you always want to present yourself in a professional manner from the moment that you start,
Don't forget how small of a network there's only 600,000 licensed pilots in the U.S.
Yes.
There's 350 million people in the U.S., 600,000 licensed pilots. Almost half of those are student pilots. And then a very small fraction of the rest of them are professional pilots. So, getting paid to fly, I should say. So it is crucial. It's as big a part of the job as all the certificates and ratings you have in your pocket.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially with how competitive it is now.
Mm-hmm.
The regionals aren't hiring at the rate that they were hiring during COVID or post COVID,
Well,
and
that's
that's
about
kind
to
of
turn around, but yeah.
yeah, absolutely, it's going to turn around. But that's kind of rippled down to even instructing. I know some
Mm-hmm.
people who have been looking for flight instructor jobs for 6 months,
Right.
and networking. You never know who you're going to meet. If you're not, I always told my students when I was instructing, even if you're not a good dude, act like you're a good dude for 10 minutes. Shake someone's hand, smile. You never know who that
Sure.
person is, and you never know where that's going to get you.
Right,
Right.
right. And comment to kind of parlay off what I was saying. A lot of those guys looking for CFI work, you wonder,
I know what you're going to say.
how was their process at that flight school as a student? Because I may or may not have seen this with my own eyes, and this was 20 years ago or whatever. But you have a guy that goes through a training program. He's always he's always on time. He leaves a positive impression on his instructors. He always studies the material in advance. He's got his, he carries himself in a professional manner. Sometimes, no matter whether they're hiring or not, those guys always seem to have a position open for them at the flight school when they graduate. But then on the
Mhm.
other hand, you got maybe the rich kid that doesn't even really want to be there, is not sure what he wants to do. He just shows up to the lesson unprepared. Maybe he's 10 minutes late, all that stuff. All of a sudden, they're not hiring when he gets a CFI. So,
Absolutely.
it all starts on day one.
It does, absolutely. No, I agree with that 100%. That's why I got my instructing job at Lunkin.
Mhm.
I'm sure there were a bunch of prospective CFI candidates that were up, and yeah, I put the work in about a year and a half. I never missed a lesson, never missed a day of work, and that meant a lot to them. So
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
maybe there'll be a chief pilot of some sports team watching that
Yep.
wants you to fly a shiny new jet. So we'll extend that. If somebody wants to comment below or get in touch with us, we'll get you in touch with Nick, and when he's ready to
Well,
move on to a shiny G550 or 500 or something, he'll
yeah.
be ready to go.
Yeah,
And
but
he
on
knows
that note,
and he
on that
learned climb gradients the hard way. So
yeah,
if
yeah,
owners happen to have a house in Aspen,
yeah,
you're
he's got
ready.
that down. He's got that down now. He understands that. Yeah,
Yep.
but Nick, real quick though, on that note, we're gonna wrap it up with this because this is every time we do this type of interview with someone, the emails and the comments hit YouTube of, well, I want to do what he's doing. How do I find whatever? If someone is and I know it's a small group of folks you're working with here at this company,
hmm
but if someone is genuinely over the moon about what you're doing and has to do this, how would they go about contacting or finding this place or
yeah,
moving forward with trying to do what you're doing?
yeah. So I thought the same thing, and I thought it was going to be impossible to work with this company. I'm one of five people. I'm one of five pilots, that is,
Yeah.
and I thought there was never going to be but I still pursued it. So don't think like that. We're always looking for pilots. We're always accepting applications. We're always accepting resumes. Um, but what you can do, you can either get a hold of me. I don't know if there's any way that you guys can put my email in
Yeah,
the
we could put that.
description, or
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't
you can
know if
get
you want that necessarily, but
uh, you. Seriously. I everywhere I go, people are handing me resumes. That camera on the side of my plane attracts so many
oh
people.
yeah,
I
I
got
So
bet
it.
it.
so I'm
Yeah.
I'm
You
used
don't
to it.
mind.
I'm used to giving out my email. I'm used to giving out my phone number. You can
Sure.
look up Winged Vision Incorporated. It's based out of Frederick, Maryland.
Great.
So we kind of throw that in
Winged
the
vision.
description, or Winged Vision Incorporated. So you can contact Bob. He's the owner, Bob Michelson. Very respected in the television industry. He's been doing it for 40 years. One of the best. So
Awesome.
don't be afraid to contact him. We had a pilot who he found us by looking at flight radar. He saw that there was an airplane over the game, and he clicked on the airplane on flight radar, looked up our tail number, and called our boss that way. So reach out,
Wow.
either to me or look up Wing Vision Incorporated, and you can find the owner of the company, Bob Michelson's number on Gmail. Or on the website. You can call him, email him. I don't know if
Great.
he's gonna. He's
Yeah,
he
he's
might get
probably gonna be overwhelmed with
ransacked.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's okay. That's okay. I did this. I did the same exact thing.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think those are two really good ways of contacting either me or contacting the owner of the company, Bob Michelson.
Well, this is awesome. Nicholas, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. And this is going to help some folks, letting them know that, there's other means to put hours in that book other than, teaching. Not everybody likes to teach.
Yeah, Nick, stay in touch with us, and we'd like to follow your career a little bit and have you back on and see where this led in a few years for you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I really appreciate your guys' time. And like Sean said, there's so many opportunities out there. Maybe you have to do a couple months of instructing to build maybe 500, 750 hours, but there's so many things out there that you could do. I had no idea that this was a thing until I shook somebody's hand. So get out there, meet people, and yeah. That's the best advice I got.
Thanks a lot. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. Hey, and for the viewers watching, if you have a question, just email us at podcast@propilotplaybook.com. Don't forget to check out our website. It has a ton of different information. There's some paid courses on there if people are interested in that. And our hottest thing right now is our weekly live coaching, where you get on a Zoom call with Sean and I, and you get to ask us any questions you'd like about getting your career started or networking, or maybe you're further along and you're trying to get a job. So these are all great products. So check all that out. We look forward to bringing you great content in 2025. Thanks.